Reject Nation, it's Greg Alba here.
And it's John Humphrey over here.
So today we're going to talk about our top 5 favorite killer movies.
Yeah.
Horror killer movies that are also available on today's sponsor,
Shudder! So if y'all don't know, Shudder is basically the ultimate destination for streaming horror on the internet. Whether you're a casual horror fan or a horror aficionado, there's something for you on Shudder.
As you guys know, horror is a vast genre. And over at Shudder, you'll find pretty much any variety of horror film imaginable, including tons of films you just won't find anywhere else.
From killer movies like we'll be discussing today, to psychological thrillers, creature features, classics, documentaries, pretty much anything you can think of.
They've also got some horror shorts on there and some original series along with curated watch lists if you're looking for a more personal touch.
Now, usually you can find a free 7-day trial of Shudder on their website. However, if you guys hit the special link in the box below and enter our promo code REAL, you can get a free month of Shudder. That's right, 30 days.
30 days
for free.
R-E-E-L. That's right, guys. Hit up our special link in the description box, enter our code REAL, and get a month of Shudder for free. Perfect for Halloween.
So if you're looking for something freaky to throw on, you're a big horror fan, or you're just in the mood because it's that time of year, definitely check out Shudder.
Now, let's talk about killers.
So last time we were talking about supernatural movies, we thought, why not take it the opposite direction, come into the real world?
Reality. So number 5 on this list is Rob Zombie's 31. This film was kind of flew under the radar just a little bit. It's Rob Zombie's latest entry into his, real killer movies.
Gritty exploitation.
One of those like horror carnival themed types of films. Malcolm McDowell's in it. His hot wife, Sherry Moon Zombie's in it too. This movie, when I first saw it, I didn't really quite like it, but then it was one of those films like grew on me over time of just sort of thinking about it because it's such an immediate movie and it's what Rob Zombie does best in terms of tension, loud characters, people freaking out, but really committing to the violence and the insanity of the situation as well. Plus, there's a really, really cool performance from Richard Brake. Whether or not you like this film, you will not deny that Richard Brake gives a powerful performance in this movie as a creepy, psychopathic assassin slash serial killer.
Yeah.
Get it? Slash.
Even people who don't like this movie at all cite Doomhead as one of the best things Rob Zombie's ever created. In terms of nowadays, we don't get exploitation like this much. If that's your flavor, I think it's well done. Check it out. It's also a Shudder exclusive. Number 4 on our list, we chose The Collector.
The Collector.
Which is a movie from a few years back.
A guy who collects coins.
Yeah, it's really scary how big his collection is. This is basically a cool twist on a home invasion thriller meets a torture movie. It stars this guy named Josh Stewart, who is a really great actor and who really brings a lot to the core of this movie. It's written and directed by the team behind Saws 4 through 7. The guys who wrote it, and then Marcus Dunstan directed it. It was designed as a Saw prequel initially, and it became its own thing, and it's basically about this thief who breaks into a house to rob these people so that he can square off some debts.
Ant-Man.
Yeah, exactly like Ant-Man. And upon entering the house, he discovers that somebody else has already broken in and is torturing the family who lives there.
Yeah.
Who are, people he knows.
So what starts off as a thief, the man must now become a hero of sorts, but will he succeed?
And if you're not a big Saw fan, but you're still into something along those lines, definitely check out The Collector, because The Collector brings a wholly different directing style, which is pretty terrific in my opinion. One of those like under the radar again, indie horror movies that came up that I really enjoyed, and you guys might too.
All right, so number 3 on this list is a movie that came out in 1977.
Something of a classic,
a cult classic, if you will. The Hills Have Eyes, directed by Wes Craven. Now, I'm sure most of you guys have probably at least seen the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which is also pretty good. But the original Hills Have Eyes continues that thing that we didn't see Wes Craven do in his later years. It's like this pulpy, gritty, it really has that like cult touch to it with the grainy filmmaking. Kind of keeps that
70s
realism,
exploitation
70s
vibe.
Exploitation. It came out a few years after like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's really well done. It's very disturbing. It really goes all out, man. Like old Wes Craven versus young Last House on the Left Wes Craven is very different. It's one of those films that's so maniacal and disturbing, but you respect it because of how well it's committed to it.
This is sort of taken from a true story, or at least a true legend of an actual, clan of incestuous cannibals living in a cave who would, prey on people.
The Alba family.
The Alba family, exactly. The Sonny Bean Alba family. The thing about The Hills Have Eyes is it's still pretty effective in the way, those 70s movies are. It's sticky and kind of desolate and paranoid and strange, and it's definitely not as fast-paced and in-your-face as the remake is, but it's still really unsettling, and it's still really grungy. It makes you feel icky at the end of the day in a way that's really effective, and it's also got some of those classic Wes Craven touches, a little bit of humor here and there, and, a pretty relatable central family.
And I think when you go back to, when you watch the remake and then you watch this one, the remake kind of makes it feel like you're dealing with supernatural characters. The original, they feel more like just real deranged people who are living in these hills, which makes it more effective. Before he was Yondu, he was
Merle Dixon, he was Henry. That's right. Number 2 on our list is Henry, Portrait of Serial Killer from 1986. Serial killer movies are tricky because there are a lot of famous serial killers and not a lot of great movies about them, and Henry isn't a real guy, but this is perhaps one of the best serial killer films I've ever seen.
In general, but especially for the 80s, when the 80s was a lot of, he got so many Friday the 13th types of slasher movies, so there was a specific type of genre for when it came to serial killers or slasher films, and then when this movie like Henry comes out,
it feels like a snuff movie.
It feels like a snuff movie. It's got this really fine line between grindhouse and art house combined into one. I feel like I said that very eloquently.
You did. Well done.
Well done. High five to me.
Five.
Yeah,
that was a good five
sounding
too.
Opinionated.
And plus, I mean, Michael Rooker is
he's
really
okay.
Scary.
It's really about Otis.
Michael Rooker is really terrific in that movie, and it's one of those, again, he's one of those actors who sort of has flown under the radar for so long, and he is a gem, and that movie is definitely indicative of that. It's hard to watch. It holds up still. It's a rough movie.
Because you're kind of just spending time with Henry. It's called a portrait, and it really is like
character
a portrait. It's not like we're completely dissecting the psychology, but in a way we are through hanging out with Henry. It's really eerie and disturbing. Arguably should be number 1 on this list, but in terms of rewatchability, our next one would be a lot more rewatchable. Number 1 on this list is a film John actually introduced me to. This movie called Maniac, which I really did enjoy, which is actually a remake. I didn't know that.
Remake of an 80s movie, yeah. The original one still has a first-person element to it, and it is, the same central idea. However, the first one takes place in New York, and it centers around Joe Spinell, who's just a totally different build and vibe for this character, and the remake transplants it into L.A. And goes with kind of the opposite character played by Elijah Wood, this sort of timid, slight, frail little guy. This lonely little guy.
And you get a good understanding of the psychology of why he turned out the way he did. A man's relationship with his mom is very important. Here, you really get to explore that. I found the directing style very fascinating because I thought this whole first-person point of view, I thought it was a gimmick at first. Then you realize that you are living vicariously through him, which is this weird alternate transporting experience when you're watching it, because when he's not killing people, you kind of like the guy, because you identify with him and you understand him. He has these central feelings of humanity and loneliness that we can all get on board for, and plus he's got this chick that he's into that she doesn't know he's a killer, and so when she doesn't know that, you kind of hope that he can get with her in some way.
It toes an interesting line of grayness where you're like, someone needs to stop you. However, I feel so bad for you in a weird way. And Elijah Wood, even though most of the movie is in first person, he does bring a lot to the character. And in terms of all the slasher movies I've ever seen, or all the, serial killer movies I've ever seen, it does do something to bring you into his mindset and to be more than just, cool kills and a big body count. And
it doesn't have to be as crazy of a psychological study in terms of its script, because there is something eerily effective. I'm really happy this movie isn't in VR, or else I feel like it would really mess with my mind, because it already did mess with my mind the first time I watched it. Watching it just through a television screen really does transport you into his mind. It's that weird debate of, man, should I like this movie? When he's like scalping women in this movie, you feel it. It's there's dark, never any movie. Violence in this specific movie that you're like, that was cool.
It definitely makes you feel icky for sure. And there are some really unsettling elements that happen. He's got this whole like mannequin farm that he's got going on. I don't want to give away too much about either version of the movie.
You can visit the Alba family's mannequin farm.
Definitely, Yeah, come on down. And actually, it has that connection to The Hills Have Eyes in the sense that Alex Aja is involved with both of the remakes.
Yeah.
He directed The Hills Have Eyes remake. He co-wrote and produced this one. It does a similar kind of thing. It updates
And
it
Piranha.
and Piranha 3D. And it updates it for the time in a really clever and effective way, I thought. And before we hit the road, just a couple honorable mentions, a couple other titles I saw around that I wanted to shout out. First of which is Black Christmas. Not, perhaps a Halloween time movie given the title. However, Black Christmas is a really terrific proto-slasher from 1974. It laid out a lot of the templates for the genre even before Halloween did. And if you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out.
John hasn't seen this movie, but Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It's kind of hard to categorize this as a killer movie, even though there's a lot of death involved in it. Because you haven't seen it, I don't want to tell you why I'm saying specifically that. In the end, it was like, we gotta knock this off the top 5, because even though I love this, I'm probably more enthusiastic about Tucker and Dale versus Evil than anything else we talked about.
I saw the trailer for Tucker and Dale, and I kind of get what you're getting at, how this could be a killer movie that subverts what that means.
Yeah.
It belongs in the same part of the video store with an asterisk, maybe. The next one I want to shout out was Sleepaway Camp, another classic slasher type movie. It's a very strange film.
80s movie.
Yeah, a lot of it's very campy and goofy.
You mean Sleepaway Camp?
Yes.
Is campy?
I walked into that one. It's a very strange movie with some interesting subplots. There's so much going on, and one of the most shocking twists I've ever seen.
He said it's campy.
You'll never see that twist coming. You just won't. And then also want to shout out Pieces. Pieces, another similar kind of movie. Very strange, very wacky.
Did you say there are good pieces in pieces?
Sure, there are some good set pieces in Pieces, including a surprise martial arts attack, which, is great. The tagline for that movie is, "It's exactly what you think it is." So just, watch that.
We're talking about a lot of 80s movies today.
Yeah. There are a lot of, killers were very popular in the 80s. And then also want to shout out Battle Royale.
Battle Royale.
Which, people love that Battle Royale, Japanese movie, kids killing each other.
Like the Alba family.
A lot of these movies are autobiographical.
I have 4 brothers that all died by my hand before I turned 17.
Wow, you're the survivor.
Well, kind of lying. I assisted. My brother took care of most of the killing. I can never.
Okay, so you're just the one who's like cunning and resourceful.
Yeah. Go get him!
Well, all right, those are some of our favorite killer movies and a couple honorable mentions and stuff like that. Comment below. What are some of yours? What are
some killers you like?
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, all these films are available on Shudder's streaming service, and it is a fantastic service. I heard about this site around last Halloween because John's part of the horror community, and I think once a month for the past year, John has been saying, what we should get? We should get a Shudder, the Shudder service, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a vested interest in horror at all, it seems like the perfect
If you
thing.
want to get especially beyond mainstream horror, into the real, underground horror, that's also good, Shudder's a great service for that.
Yeah, if you want some classics, some recognizable titles, but you also want to broaden out, check out some things that maybe you haven't seen or you should have seen or you've always heard about. There are plenty of titles like that and some great lists as well.
I feel like horror, lately it's been better in the mainstream, but for the longest time it's known to have a lot of cliches and tropes that make horror predictable. And a lot of the unpredictable, more artistic types of horror films you'll find here on Shudder. And that's why we highly recommend the service. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to The Real Rejects. Click that notification bell. Make sure to sign up for the Shudder streaming service.
Yeah, use our special code.
Use our special code. There's a link in the description box of the website, as well as our special code. That way you can get 30 days of Shudder for free. I wish we had that offer. Well, now you do. Now you do. Now yon do.
Ha, Michael Rooker joke.
Was a hooker.
Oh. And he's kind of a looker depending on your taste in gents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Killer.
That doesn't rhyme.